Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod Hector, and it is the return of Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you doing, Jarod?
Doing well, doing well. You had a good time in La La Land, working with players and chatting with peeps.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. Yeah, working is working, and it's good to see young players all the time and see how they're doing. I spent some time with some guys in the draft. I didn't train them. I just kind of watched them train, and man, we're just these guys in many cases are my kids' age, or a little bit younger. Just humble, delightful, interested to learn. Like Mr. Thorpe. I don't hear a lot of Mr. Thorpe. Because they don't know me. They don't know me as a coach, whatever. They're certainly not going to call me David. I was very impressed with them. Some of the guys will be back in school, then I'll in the draft. And then I worked with some really good players, and I saw a bunch of executives. I went to a pro day and ate some amazing Korean food and Japanese food and Mexican food.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do in LA, right?
LA is a great
Mexican and
spot
Asian
for food. Yep,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
And it's this time is also hopeful for a lot of players, right? Who are potentially on the cusp of realizing at least part one of their dream. But as David is quick to remind them, hey, congratulations, celebrate, but the real work begins now.
Well, I mean, some of these guys are going to get drafted probably, and but they don't know where. They're nervous. Yeah, anxious, nervous, as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird time. I don't like the draft process myself.
Well, we hate the draft. It's stupid.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I hate the draft. But I also hate what it does to people and players. Nevertheless, we're in the postseason, and these guys all dream. What's nice is my age is I see guys when they first come in the league, and then able to see them have success in the playoffs, whatever, is fun and sometimes daunting because it's hard. It's just, I say it all the time. It's just a hard league to succeed in and maintain your success. These guys are really incredible players, and for so many different reasons. And you can look like Jalen Brunson and think that guy's never going to make it, but you can't just judge a book you can't judge a player by how tall he is, how long he is. There's so much more to it. And Brunson's a great reminder for all these guys in the draft that if great heart, great determination, great skill and craft and toughness, you can do pretty damn good.
Yeah.
You have to have talent, and he's got a lot of talent.
For sure. And, you mentioned we're in the postseason, and, in the time that you've been away and since we last recorded with Henry before the Memorial Day holiday, we're basically at the NBA Finals, just about. Now, Minnesota may have something to say and may want to extend their series, obviously.
They do have something to say. They do have something to say. I don't know if they'll finish the series, but they're starting it.
Yes, they're starting it. Finally. And that's a good place to start, right? A common thing people often say, David, about the NBA is that in the playoffs, the margins are thin. And it's my belief that as you advance, the deeper you go into the postseason, the margins get even thinner. In this postseason, particularly the Western Conference Final with the Wolves and the Mavericks, through the first three games, Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns were well below their playoff averages coming in and their playoff efficiency coming in those three games, in those first three games when they went down 0-3. And the margin of victory for Dallas was not high in three of those games. The Wolves were in all three of them and had chances to win. In game 4, Towns and Ant were better, not amazing, but better than they had been in the first three games. And they win by 3 or 4, whatever that, a small margin again. And so, again, you look at this stuff and it's like, is it that different? And if Towns and Ant are closer to their playoff averages and efficiencies, are we looking at a different series right now than 3-1?
So I'll help you just see a little bit of a broader view. First of all, it doesn't necessarily get harder series to series because it depends on who you're playing and how healthy you are. We've seen a number of champions have their toughest battle in the first round.
It's true.
Sometimes it happens that way. And so you talk about those two guys. Well, today I was watching every missed shot of Luka and Kyrie.
Oh, that helps.
That they missed a lot of shots and didn't make a lot. And so, what a surprise. Minnesota's, 2 best scorers played pretty well. Dallas's 2 best scorers didn't really shoot very well. And so there you go. Minnesota won the game, right? I think that if you, and we'll get into this later, if we make the mistake of listening to the average media person, we're really going to be in La La Land. No pun intended for where I just was. a week ago. There's so many things going on. You may know better than I because I just really have shut out the media for my own sanity. And so sometimes I miss important things like Anthony Edwards' fatigue factor. I don't know if they're talking about it. I know I've talked to players in that series, and one player in that series, and he looked fatigued, and I could see it on the court, but this was a player's point of view as well. That's a factor that we have to consider. Luka has had a bad knee almost the whole postseason. His off days are probably a whole lot of nothing going on. Treatment. Kyrie has really been not a great factor consistently. I think he can be. I'd like to see him more aggressive early in games. He's done that sometimes, not often enough, in my opinion. That's a common thing I've complained about in the postseason with you, is guys waiting to pick their spots. I think that's a mistake too often. It's a cumulative game. What you do early, matters just as much. And so, I make the mistake of listening a little bit. And Derek, I saw one relatively smart media person wrote in an answer to something. I may have sent it to you guys.
Yep.
That Dwight Powell was -3 in his 3 minutes, and that's why they lost the game. As if Derek Lively is automatically always going to win. And I went back and watched all of Powell's minutes. I'm not blaming that loss on Dwight Powell.
Right.
Lively was amazing in one game in terms of plus minus. Doesn't mean he was amazing necessarily.
Right.
We're trying to solve really complex issues with the most basic macro view narratives, and it's just, we're not going to do that on this show. It's a mistake to do that. The reality is, when your best players take a lot of bad shots and make them, you're harder to beat than when they take a lot of bad shots and they miss them, which is what happened in Game 4. I thought Kyrie and Luka were terrible. I thought they took so many bad shots.
The Mavs could have still won that game, just like the first 3 games from Minnesota. Ant and Cat badly still could have won those games.
Yeah, which is where defense comes in. But also, and I don't know when you want to get into this, because we can wait till we get to Boston. But the narrative out in the public eye, again, I can't help but hear some, because I do have the games on, that the Western teams are the ones who are playing the tougher schedule. They're fucking out of their minds, right? Indiana's offense is so much better. Not that it played so great against Boston,
right?
And their defense was good. Boston's rating in the last 2 games when Tyrese was out, which means they're typically going to be a better defensive team, was like 116.5. It's way below what they normally are. Indiana's was down to 112 and change. Not because Tyrese was out necessarily. It would have been nice to have him, because they just miss so many threes, and they don't always do that. The Knicks know.
Yeah.
The Knicks know what it's like to play against that team when they're really hitting it, which they do often. But Minnesota and Dallas's offense fucking sucks compared to Indiana's. It's a lot of hero ball, ISO bullshit.
Yeah.
Indiana's fucking flying and moving and passing and cutting, and they've got guys that can attack and score off the dribble, off the catch, like in Siakam, the nail, in the post-up with Pascal as well. Boston ain't worried one bit. Not to say that this game in the finals will be easy. It won't be. They do have a Luka Kyrie issue and an Ant Cat
for sure.
Gobert in defense. But none of those teams play offense like the Pacers. And Boston gets Porzingis back. Well, I know we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But I do not like what I'm seeing from Minnesota and Dallas offensively.
Well, look, it's what we said, right? Which was before you left. Minnesota was the 17th ranked offense all year for a reason. Right? This is what they do. And you remember, you didn't trust them. You were like, I don't trust that team on off. And sure enough, right? This is why you had doubts about them. Now, Ant was nuclear in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Unreal.
Not so nuclear now, right? And so,
he's got good defenders in front of him. He's got good defenders helping. Lively, I heard yesterday. I didn't read this. Just a source told me he was out for game 5. That's a factor.
That matters.
He is a no pun intended, a lively defensive player in the rim. That's super important against someone like Edwards. And Conley even a little bit with his drives. Gobert and Cat at the rim. Be nice to have Lively there, not just Gafford, who's I thought he was good in his last game, even though they lost. But it's not nuanced, sophisticated stuff too often. It's just hero bullshit.
Hero or the basic thing where screen roll, right? Set a pick to get a defender off you, like, right? It's nothing like, well, Indiana has that blur ball, right? Multiple actions going off the other side. None of that's happening in this series. And I wonder if a lot of coaches, David, fall into doing that, or their players do and do what they want to do because they're so brilliant offensively. Because Luka and Kyrie are so good, they're like, this is what we're going to run anyway, regardless of what maybe the coach might want to run.
I think you're right. I think a lot of times it's the players saying, I'm going to take over. And you can't tell these players when they're like those guys. You can't tell them much. They're going to do what they want to do. And you don't want to get fired and fight it. So you really, as much as I'm down on Jason Kidd typically, I always have to temper that with, I don't know how much he can really get away with, right? Rick Carlisle was run out of town. I think Luka people did it because he probably wanted to play this way, which is how I think America should be teaching every middle school team how to play, is the way the Pacers play. They're not going to be successful all the time because you have to learn to dribble, pass, and shoot and catch. And these are really good things to teach young people. I ran offenses like this when I was doing camps and stuff, or when I was coaching my 9th grade teams. Pass and cut was the mainstay. We didn't pick and roll much back then. Stupidly, we should have. But we did this other stuff. Move the ball quickly, cut, set your man up, all those kinds of things. I heard Jaylen Brown talk about Indiana was as tough as any team they played all year. I mean, obviously, look at those games. They should have lost 3 games in 4.
Sure.
Now,
sure.
KP makes a difference, so would Tyrese probably. But I think if Dallas and Minnesota used the offense Indiana played, they'd be better.
For sure.
I do think they have higher end talent, more experience too. But they don't. And so they rely on really tough shots to be made. And I think Boston can roll those teams. That doesn't mean they will.
Right.
They're going to be fresh too. Like I thought to myself, who's happiest outside the state of Minnesota? Oh, it's the state of Massachusetts.
Oh, without question. Without
because
question.
These guys just get to shore up and get KP playing some 5-on-5 as best as you can. I heard them talk about doing championship stations, which I think is a fucking brilliant idea. We can talk about that in a minute.
They're going to have 10 days Dallas. Off. They last played on Monday. 10 days off till the final start.
Correct.
I mean, that is a joy. And not only 10 days
gift.
off, their road to the NBA Finals, yes, playoffs and taxing, but not in terms of total games played, right? No. They won round 1 in 5.
14 games total.
Round 2 in 5, and this round in 4.
Yeah.
I mean, what more? Who would? If you told them beginning of the season this was going to be, they would sign up for that 1,000 times. Yes, that's what we want.
It's one of the benefits the Warriors had in their run sometimes is they would just run through and just be so rested by the time they played, typically Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I think it was every year of those first 4 years, Cleveland till Toronto did it. It's Minnesota and Dallas had the chances. They just took a lot of really bad shots that could go in on occasion, right. 25, 35, 45%,
right?
Depending on the game. And people think, oh, these guys are the greatest finishers ever. I heard Stan Van Gundy say in the second quarter, with the 2 best finishers in the game. I just laughed out loud. Sometimes, not
always.
This is not Tide, okay? This isn't Coke. These aren't brands that are commodities. That are bacon is bacon is bacon is bacon, mm-hmm. right? Detergent is detergent. Sorry, humans don't work that way.
Right.
We've got a whole bunch of complex things going on. Pain and injury and fatigue and just missed shots and out of rhythm. And so they just were the opposite of good finishers. They were bad finishers.
Correct.
And now they got I talked to a player in the Mavericks last night. They're not happy to be in Minneapolis.
I'm sure
he said they're focused and connected. He really feels good about where they are. But they'd much rather be getting ready for the finals. And they
of course they would.
They aren't doing it because they didn't play good enough because they didn't move the ball well enough.
And God help them if they lose Game 5. which is very possible.
I think is very possible. I think they can get blown out tonight.
I agree.
Doesn't mean they will.
Right.
Who knows what will happen? But I think they could.
You mentioned Jason Kidd, and one of the things I enjoy about you is that you're honest about coaches, but you're hard on them when you need to be, and you've been hard on Jason Kidd. This Dallas Mavericks team, since basically mid-January, I think, if I'm not mistaken, their defense really ratcheted up another level. So have your opinions about Kidd or his management style changed over the last couple months?
I've been less focused on that as I have been the job of Nico Harrison. I think he just did a great trade deadline we've written and talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The Kidd's gotten out of the way of his best players. Whoever's running their defense, and Kidd gets credit as the head coach, clearly has done a good job. They've absolutely been a terrific defensive team. Derek Jones Jr. is outplaying what anyone's really ever expected of him. PJ is not necessarily defensively, but overall has been good.
So good.
Lively's been terrific. Gafford up and down some, but serves a role and serves his place. I think Kidd gets out of the way like a lot of coaches do. They get out of the way and let their players play. Rightly or wrongly, we can argue that. But he's not messed his team up, that's for sure. And you judge a team by I judge a coach by how his team is playing, and they finished the season 16-4, and they knocked off 1 seed OKC, and a team equal with them record wise. I think Minnesota had the same record as OKC, if I'm right, and just lost the tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker.
Maybe one loss more.
Oh yeah.
That's why they're 3 and out of 1 seed, and they're on the brink of knocking them off too. So he's clearly done a good job.
Got to get credit for that. And it's so interesting. I love that. We're going to put a pin in this coaching thing because we're going to talk about coaching again a little bit later. And I think this idea of getting out of the way of players, which I know you wildly disagree with, but there's a way in which you can do the thing necessary, which is build trust so that you can coach these players hard, is something that I know. I mean, it's basically the heart of your business. That's what you do. I want to talk about Luka really quickly. For the last couple years, and still didn't change this year because they lost. I refer to Nikola Jokic as the ultimate problem solver, right? Like LeBron, like these super fast processors. They just doesn't matter. Like they just know what to do. Now they may not make the shot or the pass to the player. They may not hit it, but they know the right thing to do.
They read the game at a high level. Yeah.
I feel like Luka's like that too, David. Like I just watch him and I'm just like, man, come on. Like I literally just like, this is not fair. Like that's excellent defense. Yeah. Like this isn't fair. He shouldn't be able to also be able to whip that pass cross court to PJ Washington, who seemingly never misses a corner 3 in these games.
Luka's made some really amazing passes. He's Luka's shot making though is what sets him apart.
God.
Yeah. And that's what he's just he can just make any shot.
Shots that have no business going in, David. That really have no business going in my head. And I know they do because he practices them, but I'm like, that shouldn't go in as frequently as it does.
He's been playing this way for a long time.
I know.
He's been doing this since he was a teenager. So he's got a lot of experience taking these kinds of shots. As someone who gets a chance to deal with players as they're kind of ascending into a role where they can score more and shoot more, you've got to, you got to shoot that fadeaway because you're going to have the chance to do it. Yesterday, I had some players in my gym. One of them is going to be the best scorer on his college team. He's a good 6'6" wing. He's a guard. He's got a chance to be a really good player. He'll make money playing somewhere, I'm sure. And we worked on getting higher arc and getting a better fade on his second box jumpers because he's going to be the one taking the shot late in a possession. And there's going to be some big dude put his paws up there. And if you don't hit the rim, it's a violation in college. It's just like pros or Europe, you got to hit the rim. So you better put arc on it. He's going to block it. The possession's over. So Luka's been doing this a long time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He's been doing that a long time.
The angles, David, and you talk about holding for that extra half a heartbeat. Like he does it on shot. I'm like, shots, and I'm like, ooh, it's going to get blocked. I'm like, no, it won't. Because he's holding it down. I'm like, God, how does this guy do it? Like he's such an incredible basketball player.
It's a big thing what you're saying. We tell defenders to alter someone's shot. We tell offensive players, don't let them alter your shot because you're going to miss if you do. But Luka's one of those rare guys that can alter. I coached Kevin Martin all the time. Kevin had lots of different ways he can get shots off and still make them. That's why he could score 20 a game over 6 different seasons in the NBA and averaged 24 a couple times. That's talent. You can practice it all you want, but plenty of people can practice it and never get it. Luka can both create the space. He's got the size to do it. His handle is elite for his size, especially, and lack of athleticism. Quickness, he breaks really great, as you know. Changing speed's great. And he just knows how to get shots off. And because he's done it so much, he makes them a lot. But not often enough.
And his deceleration, right? His break speed is number 1 in the NBA.
His sudden breaking is the best. Yep. Yeah, his sudden breaking. Yeah.
And you talk about him being a teenager and playing overseas. That time at Real Madrid as a teenager and winning the La Liga and winning Eurobasket and all that. I mean, that was just as a teenager so monumental. I know we mentioned this before on the pod. Maybe a season or 2 ago, he was on a podcast and someone asked him, is it easier or harder to score 30 points a game in the NBA? He was like, easier. He was like, because in that league over there, and he was younger, like, he's like, it's just way more physical. Like things that are fouls here would not be fouls over there. Like, and I was like, wow. And that he has this way about him where
I'd want to hear him answer that question now, because you made a great point.
Yeah.
He was a teenager.
Yeah.
So now Luka can go back and play for Madrid, and let me know how it goes.
Yeah, probably pretty easy.
I think far easier anyway.
Yeah.
You're right though. If they allow more pushes and shoves and grabbing and all that kind of stuff. If you're watching the playoffs, though, there's plenty of that going on right now.
All the time.
And unless you're the Pacers, they don't call it.
Well, I mean, the playoffs were so. David, I was like, I think I texted you. Went, oh my God, they actually call the forearm offensive charge on Tatum. They never call that on the offensive player. Yeah. And Tatum, I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, must have been so egregious they had to call it. Had to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't figure a lot of stuff out. There's been some really surprising things. Not that I think the refs are so bad. I don't think that. But yeah, so Luka is used to everything, and this was just the court's much bigger.
Yes.
So there's so much more space. So that's why it's easier in the regular season, especially.
Yeah.
But Minnesota has lots of length and smart defensive players, and they made it tough on those guys, and they have made shots and won, and they missed mostly everything. I think they each missed like 12 shots.
Yeah, and still it wasn't a blowout. They lost by like 3 or 4.
Again, because they're playing defense too. Minnesota's offense isn't good.
Right. This is so, again, anything can happen tonight. And I just like to point out that before these playoffs even started, we started making our predictions. I said, this Dallas team, they can make the NBA Finals. They're a game away. And I'm not saying I was so clairvoyant that I knew. All I was saying was if they keep playing defense the way they had been all year, and with those two dudes, I was like, Luka could be the best guy in any series because he's that good. And, well, that helps, right? It really helps. So we'll see what happens tonight in Game 5. David and I both think Minnesota's got more than a chance. And again, I'm telling you now, if Minnesota wins that game, Boston is like, yes, go to Game 7, please. Because they're just so rested and ready. And
And the thing, and we'll get to Boston. Are we getting to Boston next?
We're getting to Boston next, yep.
So this is a good segue into it. So one of the things that you forget about with Boston, so easy to forget about, I'll just ask you, what were they better at this year, offense or defense?
I think their offense is slightly better, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Right. The fact that you got to think about it tells you everything. It was the best offense of all time.
Yeah.
The best offense of all time. The Pacers happen to have the second best offense of all time. But we think of Boston in defense, and they only finished second in defense. What a terrible year it was.
Right.
First in the East, and then second behind Minnesota, I think. But that's the issue that those teams who are playing still aren't going to be able to solve so easily. Is they have weapons everywhere.
Yeah.
And let's just not forget. They won Game 3 in the last seconds. Okay, and Al Horford made 7 threes. I promise you, going into the game, that's exactly what the Pacers were hoping would happen. Is Horford would have to shoot 12 threes,
and he made 7 of them.
Never had done that before in the playoffs, I believe. And now you got with KP back. They spread you out. Everyone's a weapon. You can't slough off anybody.
Yep.
You can try. The Pacers did. Horford buried 7 threes, 21 points, which was, by the way, more than the entire Pacers offense made.
Well, it's what you say, David, all the time about defense. It's blackjack. You can't take everything away, right? Something's going. You have to give something up. So the Pacers thought, Al Horford, you ain't going to kill us from 3.
Well, I mean, the biggest shot was the left corner 3 by Horford in Game 3. Tatum left him to go. I'm sorry, Turner left him to go help on Tatum. I thought that was a mistake because you really want to protect 3s there, not 2s. And Tatum may or may not have scored, but leaving Horford wide open, he may have missed also. He just didn't. And that's the same as Derek White in the right corner of Game 4.
Oh, you knew that was going in when he shot it. You knew it.
Right, but I mean, these are 4 out of 10 chances at best. And so you pick your poison. They did, and Boston just buried it. That's what Minnesota has the chance of saying, we're better at the point of attack, therefore we can help less and get away with it. Maybe. Brown and Tatum are really dynamic scorers. And White and Holiday are very good players overall. That there's a reason why they're the best offense in history. Yeah, there's a reason.
Listen, the Celtics' positional versatility is something we've talked about all year, and their ability to have 5 guys on the floor who can do a variety of things. Of course, Tatum and Brown get the headlines because they're the scorers.
They're great.
But Derek White and Drew Holiday, we talked about all year. What a luxury it is to have those two guys. Because again, they can switch on to anyone. Best guard defenders for sure in the league. Both made all defense. They're secondary, tertiary rim protectors too. They're just amazing.
Derek White's amazing.
And you don't. The advantage again to when they're on someone, you don't have to send help is so huge. Nobody getting into rotations now, and for those starved challenge offenses, particularly Minnesota, that's a good thing, right? If I don't have to help, who's getting wide open threes on Minnesota? I mean, if it's them or even Dallas, right? If you don't have to send help that way, it's incredible.
Yeah, we'll see how the matchups go. Guarding them's a problem, and you get tired. I thought Indiana got tired because they had to work harder. Like against the Knicks, it's a lot of standing around, let Brunson play one-on-one, and maybe help late, maybe not. Boston's harder, and you're chasing more guys. You're not chasing Josh Hart the same way you're chasing Derek White or Drew Holiday from three. And they have no one on the wing, the Knicks don't, that can play like Brown or Tatum. Both those guys are terrifying offensive players.
Oh my God.
I'm a huge fan of both players, and they're just terrific guys. That I'm super impressed with them.
They're incredible. And I said this to in our group chat. And I'm not saying this to cause controversy. It's just something that I've noted when I've watched them this postseason. David, this team to me, Boston, seems like Jaylen Brown's team. Like he seems to be the guy that is grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck every time coming out on both ends. It's like, nope, follow me, guys. Like I'm setting the tone as being super engaged on offense, super engaged on defense. At least that's how I'm reading it. I could be wrong. That's just what I see when I watch it.
I think that he's more demonstrative. I don't understand all the hate on Tatum because he's not the best player in the world. Who cares?
No, I mean, I don't care about that.
Was he All-NBA first team again?
I think so. Yeah, he was. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are we doing?
I agree.
Best player for the season on the best team in the league by far.
All-NBA first team means you're top five, right? That's what that means. So, I mean.
Especially now, they don't do it by position necessarily. Right? I think that because there's so many positionless guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brown is super hard to guard, and I think he's really coming into his own. And Tatum, I talked to him after the game in the locker room. I think I sent you guys the clip.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what he was saying. Maybe I hit the volume down. Maybe I couldn't hear anything. I thought that was just filming it. But you could see Tatum so genuinely happy for Brown in that moment. And that's really, I think, empowered Brown a lot. Now, remember, he's also going to say, get the fuck off me. And he's the one that I'm hearing is going to Miami next year. How that happens. I talked to a league executive last night. He was so blown away last night. He texted me this morning. I still can't believe what you said to me. By the way, if you had listened to our show, you had heard me say it 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
I thought Tatum was terrific in a tough ass series.
Mm-hmm.
He saw mostly Nesmith and a very good defensive playing Siakam in that series.
Very
he hasn't
good
always
defenders.
played great defense.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's hard to be power forward, a real power forward, and play good defense on perimeter guys. Not many guys that can do it. But I thought Tatum saw the teeth of their defense and did well. I was happy to pass the ball. He's the one who made the big assist to Horford on that last three.
What a pass that was to Horford.
Yeah. I mean, we work on it all the time, that behind the back. It's not so hard for them. They're just that dynamic duo with that backcourt, and then Horford at the 5. They're hard to guard. They spread you out, and I think it wears. I think that's one reason why the Pacers' offense was bad at the end. Is they were just exhausted. It's really hard to guard those guys. Much easier to guard Milwaukee and
for sure. They too, David, Brown and Tatum. When I watched them, they are just physically so strong.
Brown, especially.
I'm just
monster.
like, my God, like that's got to wear on you. You're guarding him, right? I'm like, this is he. I'm just listen. I've never been not a Jaylen Brown fan, but I'm like, I've seen a new level to him this postseason. I'm like, wow, he's incredible.
I don't know. I saw someone. I don't remember what it was. Was Stephen A. Smith or something talk? Which is I hate that I'm mentioning
which already takes you down a rabbit hole you don't want to go.
Mention, but I don't know who it was. I didn't see it. I just saw the transliteration of it, the transcription of it. Of he's not marketable because of this, that, whatever. Like, you think he gives a fuck? Do you know what his contract is worth?
Right. Who cares? Like,
right. You think? I don't think he cares. I think he's trying to change the world.
It's just
like, to me, I don't necessarily care your race or ethnicity. If you're trying to help the world, I'm all in.
Right.
his position, he's just got a lot of leverage. He can do a lot of great things. This is a smart man who could be president of the United States one day, and I'd probably be very happy about it.
This is
just haven't played basketball for now, but he gets the world. Let's just embrace that. And he's still getting better.
He is.
I've talked to players playing against him. He's no joke. He's fucking like a bull in a china shop that doesn't knock over any plates because he knows what he's doing.
Right.
He's a monster. Yeah. I think he's a big problem for Minnesota. No. And Edwards, you better hope he doesn't guard you and you don't have to guard him.
Well, I think Ant, if they're lucky enough to advance past Dallas, which they have a long way to go, I think Ant will have learned from, maybe I'm not going to say anything about who I'm guarding or who's guarding me to start this series. But yeah, that whole Stephen A thing, we'll get into some media stuff a little bit later. None of that makes sense. But no, Boston looks great. And, you mentioned, we talked about Jason Kidd and your opinions of him. How do you feel about Joe Mazzulla as a tactician? I know he's still very early in his career. He's only year 2 as a head coach. Do you like what Boston's running, how they look? Do you think there's more stuff they can do? How do you feel Joe as a tactician and as a coach overall has been doing in Boston?
I think Joe, like Rick Carlisle, has done a great job in building their systems. And I don't know yet what kind of game coach he is. He's not bad. I do like the fact that he finds ways to get them to ratchet up their defensive intensity. I also think it's a product of the teams wearing down against them. I like the fact that he wasn't afraid to run. As with the Knicks, I thought made a mistake of running with Indiana. Mm-hmm. I thought Boston knew what they were doing. They were super opportunistic. I think they know who they are, and they don't take a lot of bad shots. Guys kind of know what they're supposed to do all the time. It's to me not a coincidence that their G League team made the finals and their NBA team made the finals. This is a Brad Stevens operation from A to Z, and it's super impressive. No, and this is 5 Eastern Conference Finals in 7 years, 2 NBA Finals, and the only core player that's 30, I think, is Horford. Oh no, Drew is.
Oh yeah, Drew. I think Drew 30, 31. Drew, like me.
Yeah, and Derek White's getting there. He might be at 30 now. Yeah, no, that's not old.
No.
In today's world, we have to start wrapping our arms around, as much to Henry's chagrin. I do better sometimes.
Yeah,
it's every person's different. But I talked to a player a lot in the playoffs. Every off day that he could when he was home, hyperbaric chamber. I had dinner with an NBA guy last night who was in town, and he was raving about hyperbaric chambers. I still don't really know what they are until he told me. Just super freezing cold. Mm-hmm. He said for 3 minutes. I don't know about anyone else that does it. The guy told me last night his is a 3-minute. His team's got one. 3 minutes in there, and but they didn't do that back in the day.
Well, back
in the day.
So here's the thing, right? So it's an oxygen chamber, right? And what it does is it increases the normal flow of oxygen, right, to 2x or 3x the normal rate that exists if you're standing outside in the just normal everyday world, right? That's right. And more oxygen in your blood flow promotes, right, better recovery.
But how cold is it?
Various things. I don't know how cold it is, but I know it is colder than, just
the guy I talked to last night said it was real. It's like they had to wear all sorts of protective clothing.
Yeah, for sure.
To protect themselves.
For sure.
I'm sure there's different kinds, but
no
I'm
doubt.
just saying.
And you said
we've
it
got
differently.
So many things now to help our players age well longer.
But
Derek White and Drew Holiday do not look old to me. Neither does Horford.
No. My point about the hyperbaric chamber I wanted to make was this was something that we'd heard about this, God, as far back as like the mid 80s. Michael Jackson had a hyperbaric chamber, right?
That's right.
Like that. And now, 2024, fast forward, it's so commonplace now that, right? So it's the advancement, right, of how things are. There used to be a thing where maybe one guy was doing it, right? In the mid-80s in the NBA, maybe no guys had it. Now, almost every team probably has one, and I bet a bunch of guys have them at their home.
Well, so I don't know if anyone has them in their home. I'm sure you're right. The guys I talked to 2 guys the last 3 days who one has one in his facility, the other, there's one nearby that they could just go pay for. And here's a quote from both of them. All I know is afterwards, I feel amazing. Good.
Good. Guess what? That matters at this time of year. What you want to do is feel amazing.
When you feel great, you'll get better stretching. You'll get better working.
Play great.
You feel better. That really is really helpful. Yeah.
One last thing on Boston, David. You mentioned Porzingis, and we talked about all year how he was the key to unlocking that 5-man unit and making it basically a world destroyer, right? That's why it was the number 1 offense all year.
Of all time.
Of all time. They have 10. And by the way, the offensive all-time records are breaking every year, right? So
right.
3 years ago, when Brooklyn had their big three, that was the best offense of all time.
Yep.
It just changes because it's just so incredible to stop these amazing players now. All right, so 10 days. Boston has still not made any definitive statement about he'll be back for game one. None of that. But how key is he for Boston to win the finals? And can they win even if he doesn't play, regardless of who their opponent is?
Yes, they can win without him. He would be very important. He makes those bigs work, and you don't worry about the Horford lob dunk. You can worry about the KP lob, the KP three, the bucket getting. He can do in the paint. Another shot maker. You also have to allow for plan B's and C's. Tatum gets in foul trouble. Brown twists his ankle for a quarter or half or a game. He's just another good tool on offense. And this is already an elite defensive team that can add their best shot blocker to the group. And he's going to be not fresh.
Right.
He'll be rusty.
Right.
So game 1 and 2 probably be at his worst. That depends on how well they do in practice.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the two-way players in Boston working, I'm sure. KP's got to be playing against those guys. And no, I think he's coming back at a perfect time.
Yeah, kudos. All right, guys, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. Okay, David, the Indiana Pacers, look, I know they're disappointed and there's some disappointment going around Indiana because, they weren't quite able to win. And those games were close, right? Close games. They had chances, but they're not able to execute and make the right decisions down the stretch. But all that being said, this team overachieved this season. Nobody had them going to the playoffs to start the year, and no one sure had them going to the conference finals. So they are on a wonderful trajectory, and you wrote a wonderful piece that's up on TrueHoop.com right now about what the Pacers need to look forward to, but you also urged a word of caution for the Indiana Pacers. And it's interesting because this is, and you mentioned it in your piece, it's giving Atlanta Hawks vibes, right? This is a team that went to the conference finals, and we thought, and I don't think we were wrong to think it, they have the pieces to win a championship. Now, a variety of things did not happen the way that they were supposed to for that team. Mainly, and I've said this a million times, I just thought Trae Young's attitude after going to the conference finals was not one of a leader and one to galvanize a team. They started the next season, I don't know, 0-2 or something, and his comments in the media was, it's hard to get up for the regular season after what we accomplished. I'm like, after what you accomplished? You went to one conference finals. What does that mean? That means nothing. And they haven't sniffed anything since. So word of caution, you Pacers, don't go down that path of, all right, life is looking rosy. But let's talk more about Indiana, David. What did you like specifically about this season for them? And what gives you concern going forward?
There's not a lot of concern other than just natural concerns, which you just mentioned. And so I'll touch on that in a minute. I love the way they play offensively. And I think there's room for growth there because Siakam is the only starter over 27, 28. Turner's like 27, 28. The other guys are 24 and younger. Halliburton, Neesmith, and Nembhard, all 24 years old. I love Jarris Walker's talent as a potential three-man. I think he really solves some problems for them because I think he can be a small forward rim protector, which is very rare. I think Ben Shepherd has a chance to fit in. How could you expect a team to win a game when they're starting Ben Shepherd? I'm sorry. Nothing against Ben. He's a rookie.
Right.
And he wasn't Paolo Banchero rookie, although I don't think Paolo would be helpful to a team as a rookie in the Eastern Conference Finals either. Pretty much most rookies aren't. So as much as I don't love some things about Ben Matherin's game, he probably would have started and has had success against some great teams. He's their best guy getting fouled. He can shoot the ball well. Shepherd, I think, is probably a better defender, and I kind of like him more going forward than I do Mathurin. But they could have an all-star backcourt, which we'll get to that, I'm sure, in a minute. I love so the difference between Atlanta and Indiana is probably Siakam. A Pacers player told me, we love everything he says to us. Rick Carlisle said in a couple different press conferences, his wisdom is seeping into our team. And then he gave, I said this to Henry, he gave, I know Pascal, but I had nothing to do with any of this. He gave a post-game presser where he sounded like an executive. Same what you just said. Nothing is guaranteed. The next day, Chad Buchanan, the GM, who's a great guy, smart guy, and I think a very good executive, also, along with Kevin Pritchard, who run that team, when he said this isn't linear. That's basically what Pascal was saying the day before. I thought I'd never leave Toronto. I thought in year 3, we're in the finals, we're champions. I thought it would happen all the time. Not even close. And I'm not in Toronto anymore. The future is not written. It's not scripted. And I think that, to your point on Trae, they have their own Trae Young and Tyrese Halliburton, a one-dimensional superstar who I think has more upside defensively than Trae. We have to see it. We haven't seen it yet. If Tyrese chooses to listen to Pascal, I have no idea how that's going. I do know that the day after they lost their last game, not only did Rick Carlisle say job number 1 is recruiting Pascal Siakam, but so did Tyrese.
He did.
That was a good sign. That was some humility there. Like, hey, it's not all about me. We need this guy. And my guess is they'll get it done pretty quickly here. You won't know until July, but they'll get it done quickly. And if Tyrese just falls in line a little bit on what Pascal's saying, not everyone will buy in. Because if Tyrese is buying in, everyone will buy in. He is their best player. The metrics spare that out, and he was all NBA. And they could win 55 games next year. They could win 45 games next year. The East, if healthy, is loaded. If people want to trash the East, it was because of injury as much as anything. A healthy Philly team is scary. And just wait. Let's see who they get. Let's see. What if they get Jimmy Butler? They'll go after somebody.
What if they get Paul George? Yeah.
Paul George, yeah. So Siakam he is a free agent. Embiid's unbelievable. Milwaukee should be better next year. New coach notwithstanding and all of that. I don't know about Miami.
Right.
Orlando improved. We'll see about Cleveland.
The Knicks.
The Knicks, without question, are going to be better if they're healthy. Indy has a chance to win 55-plus games because they have a chance to just be fantastic. But it's just a chance. A good chance. It's not a definite chance. It's not guaranteed. Tyrese plays for Team USA. We'll see how that goes. I think Nembhard's likely pairing for Team Canada. We'll see how that goes. We want them healthy.
Yeah.
They can be a tremendous team if they handle the offseason well.
I love asking you these kinds of questions. If you were counseling Tyrese this summer, what would you tell this brilliant young man, brilliant offensive player?
I would tell him not to play in the Olympics.
Well,
I'm worried about his hamstrings.
Yeah, that's a good.
I'm worried about his hamstrings. I'm not a doctor, but people I talk to who do talk to doctors are worried about his hamstrings. So let's assume he plays and is fine. Let's hope anyway. I would tell him, number 1, we have to stay lean but much stronger. You're not a defensive force at all. You're a throwaway doll on defense too often. You're literally running away from guys. I think Travis Moran, our editor, he had, I think, 14 fouls in 15 games that he played.
Not great.
That's egregious. That's egregious to me. Not that I think fouling is good. I think fouling is terrible.
Fouling.
It's a sign of lack of competitiveness. And also in the playoffs, sometimes you got to foul a guy. You got to make him make 2 free throws because if you're an 80% free throw shooter, there's a 64% probability you'll make both. You got to put some. So if you're a 70% free throw shooter, which the league has plenty of those, you're only making 2, probably 49% of the time. You square the number. So you got to take some fouls, my guy. And so I'd like to see him get stronger. I'd like to see him play with more force defensively. I think they learned a lesson. That guy, Andrew Nembhard's really fucking good. Really fucking good. Tyrese, you don't have to wear the crown all the time. And oh, by the way, your shooting ability makes everyone better because of your gravity. So by doing a little less, I think your offense can be, I think, number 1 next year, not number 2. And you'll have more energy to play defense. And I think his shot selection has to get better. In late in games, I thought it was bad. He's not the only one, by the way. It's certainly not just for the Pacers themselves. Other teams have problems late in games. But I'd like to see a more consistent defensive effort. And if he does, he's got a supermax now. He's got all this money. He's all NBA. Maybe do a little bit less. Let your team do just a little bit more. You'll be fresher come playoff time, which I think is valuable. He's such an amazing passer. If he plays the right way with Nembhard, they have a chance to be 2 All-Stars. That's how good Nembhard is.
So let's get to Andrew Nembhard. His brilliance and emergence, this season for most people who just tuned into Indiana, but those who've been watching them closely, Last year as a rookie, he had incredibly amazing games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, metrically, I still think it shows overall for a season, and he was hurt to start this season. He's still not a plus player in terms of impact on a game.
Yeah, I think he finished minus 0.3, but that was his first 2 months dealing with kidney stones and back issues connected to that. He had a rough first 2 months, and he wasn't starting.
Correct.
I wish Taylor would do a calendar.
Yeah.
So we could just look at last 3 months CPM.
I will assume, without even knowing what it looks like, he was for sure a plus player the last 3 months of the season and was for sure a plus player in the postseason. Okay. This can be an all-star backcourt of Nembhard and Tyrese, and it works because Nembhard he's got all defensive capabilities, would you say, as a defender?
Yes, watching the playoffs closely, I think it's a little tougher now because he's not a chaos creator. He's not long. I mean, Jalen Brunson beat him once off the dribble. I remember it was a spectacular move, and the world lost their minds. It didn't happen very much. Normally, he was taking contested shots over him 17 feet. He happened to make a bunch early, not so much late. People quickly forgot about that those last couple of games. He didn't do a whole lot. He is a brilliant off-the-ball defender, too, and going to get better. He's just 24. And 2 years in the league. So he's their best defensive player. There's a reason why he was on Brunson to start the series. Brunson murdered Nesmith in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aaron Nesmith is also very good.
Yes.
I love Aaron Nesmith as a role player. But the thing about Nembhard is he led the NBA, according to NBA.com, he led the NBA in points per drive and led the NBA playoffs in three-point shooting for guys that took a decent amount of threes.
Yeah.
Guys that took one every other game, whatever. That's a hell of a combination.
Oh, for sure.
Last 2 games when he does it as a
starter,
as a player that hasn't played point guard all year.
I had to play point guard.
So he had a run. He played a point guard a little bit last year, not a lot. But this guy is fearless. Draymond Green talked about how fearless he was. Shaq and Mike Green said he's going to be a future star. Oh yeah, this guy he's got it. He's just an agent who represents a player that people are saying the teams are saying we think he's like an Andrew Nembhard. Super smart, crafty, 6'5", strong. That's this other guy, not just Andrew. And I told the agent, I'm sorry to tell you, but Nembhard's one of one. Like the guy has 19 assists and 5 turnovers his last 2 games against the fucking Boston Celtics. And oh, by the way, they couldn't make a shot. He went 4 of 7 in game 3. The team went 1 of the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
TJ made 1 3 actually off a Nembhard pass.
Yep.
And he still had 9 assists in the game. And then he had 10 in the last game. They still didn't shoot great. And he's not even playing point guard very much. So that's his natural position. Oh, yeah. I don't know if they can accommodate him. It's like Darius Garland and Donovan out. But I think he's the perfect guy. Unless Klay Thompson can be 25 again. I like the idea of Klay next to Tyrese.
Right.
But that guy doesn't exist in the league right now that I know of. Ben Shepherd one day might be, probably not. But if he can shoot 42% from 3, but Rick likes having 2 playmakers in the backcourt. Remember, he had tons of guards in the Mavericks over the years. Jason Terry came off the bench, and J.J. Barea came off the bench.
He loves that.
Devin Harris would start with other guards. Raymond Felton, like he loves having multiple guards, and the offense works because of it. So I think that backcourt can be really special, and his defensive ability pairs really well with what Tyrese can't do so far.
For sure. Look, you mentioned it all. Fearless three-point shooter, led the excellent three-point shooter. And David, he excels in the areas that you talk about with your work with your players, which is the second box, right? He gets into that lane. I'm like, every time he goes in, I'm like, oh, that's going in. It's money. And it's just a beautiful, gets the right arc. He's just at the right spot. Defender's not blocking it. He's great. So if you're Indiana, you're under the cap. Locking this dude up, to me, is priority number 1. So second round picks can sign any deal they want, more or less. And so he did a 3+1 team option for a lot of guaranteed money. I mean, 3 years are fully guaranteed at a decent number. So it was like the equivalent of being the 19th pick in the draft when he was drafted 31st for the deal he signed. The good news for the team is they get him next year super cheap, $2 million and change. In year 4, it's a team option. Obviously, they're going to pick it up. However, if you do that, now he's a free agent when the season's over. Right.
And then I think they're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you rip up the contract after 3.
I agree.
And you give him a fat fucking deal. And you keep him there. And then if you decide, you know what, we want to get a 6'7" 2 guard next to Tyrese. Yeah, and you use the salary slot to get the next guy you want.
Mm-hmm.
So the all-star somewhere else that isn't happy where he is, right? If in 3 years, if it was Mikal Bridges, then you just do the Nembhard for Mikal Bridges,
right?
So he won't be there then. So in Brooklyn anyway. So yeah, I think that they're looking good. The Pacers can bring Toppin back. It'll cost them.
I like Toppin.
I really like the way Obi played.
I do. Me too.
Neesmith is on a team-friendly deal. Turner's got to get better, I think. But either way, TJ McConnell, what a brilliant player he was. I'm literally using TJ clips to teach a lot of guards right now all over the country. Yep, he's just amazing. Amazing player. And you would never guess it because he can't jump.
Right, but who cares? He can shoot. He can shoot. He can use his dribble to get into the lane. Shoot. I mean, he's outstanding. TJ was
super
so good
player.
this postseason.
Yeah.
You mentioned someone earlier on Indiana, and I want to talk about him briefly. What do you think for this current Pacers team, for them to continue the trajectory of winning 55 games and potentially doing even better next year in the postseason? Yeah. What is the perfect optimization right now of Ben Mathurin?
I think that you have to trade him for a first-round pick.
Okay, so he can't be on this team. Okay.
No. I'm going to answer your question.
Oh, okay.
I just want to. I think he's the odd man out.
Okay.
He's such a bad defensive player. He does have upside, but they don't have a lot of time now to just figure it out. He's had 2 years. They gave him the starting spot over Nembhard to start the year, even before he got the kidney stones, because he was a lottery pick the year before. And so, in a sense, Nembhard's beating out Chris Duarte lottery pick, and then Mathurin lottery pick twice because he beat him out the second time after the season started. I just don't think he's a great fit necessarily unless he was willing to be their sixth man, which if I was Indiana and I thought Ben Mathurin would agree to it, I wouldn't re-sign Toppin. I would let Jarris Walker play more. Siakam at some three because I think Pascal can play some 3-2, depending on who your guard and so forth. And Mathurin becomes my six-man scorer along with TJ. I think he's a really good scorer and a stubborn scorer. But I don't think he's willing to accept it because number 6 pick, he wants to be a max player. You're not going to be a max player as a six man.
Correct.
So they have to figure that out. If Mathurin says, I'm okay with that, I want to win. Then I would maybe not bring back Toppin and let Ben figure out that role as a six-man scorer. But they traded 3 first-round pick for Siakam. I could see them saying, let's get one of them back.
Okay, that makes sense. Look, the future looks, as David wrote about, looks good in Indiana. They have some choices they have to make and some things they got to do, but things are trending in a positive direction for the Pacers. All right, David, we were talking about the media earlier, and their continued discourse around the game is just so bad for it on so many levels, and it's not helpful because, again, the people that are doing it are former super popular players like Shaq and Chuck, or current popular players like Draymond. And it just causes, it's just bad all around because this is what fans mimic and parrot. Oh, so-and-so must not be good because Draymond said it, right? And it's like, no, that isn't it, right? And I'm going to, the Rudy thing is, that's the number one, right? Like, Draymond hates Rudy. Like, that is a personal beef. That is very obvious to anybody with eyes. I mean, Jesus Christ, he put the man in a rear naked chokehold in a game at the beginning of the season and got suspended for it. Like, this is he hates this dude. So he will never say anything positive about Rudy, even though you and I know what Rudy means to that team defensively. I mean, no Rudy Gobert, this team is not in the position that it is right now, which is the conference finals. I mean, and the numbers all back it up, right? Their on-off numbers are just, in the playoffs especially, he gets off the floor, bad things start happening for that team. And it's a shame because it causes fans, David, to not be able to think about the game in a more detailed way and realize the defense isn't just about shutting your man down one-on-one, right? It's more complex things happening in the game defensively. I mean, Rudy causes teams to alter their entire offensive approach. That is huge. When we say, about scoring in the paint, we have to figure out how we're going to do that because this guy is a real problem. And again, people don't see that because Draymond hates Rudy.
Yeah, my issue with these guys is there's no vision. It's just talk, and it's not just the players. I had the ESPN on one day. I want with DirecTV, if it's on, it's being recorded, and so I hadn't pressed record. As long as I don't change the channel, I'm fine. So I was doing something. I was on the phone. I want to make sure I caught the beginning of the game, but I might have been on the phone while it started. I don't want to press pause, so I just let it run. And I get off the phone and it's on. So I'm on and I hear Stephen A. Smith and Wilbon giving us their opinion of the game. And I just don't know why anyone cares what they think. I mean that. I'm not impressed with you when you see Nembhard play the way he's playing and say he's a star. What did I text the group when Tyrese went out after game 2? What I write? Do you remember? I'll send you the screenshot.
I don't remember, but I knew it was something. We all agree because we're like, yeah, well, we know because we watched the Pacers.
Right. I said I know a secret.
Yeah, right.
Nembhard's better than Halliburton.
Right. Yes.
What I meant is this version of Halliburton.
Yes.
The guy that's playing in the playoffs is not healthy.
Correct.
This Nembhard's better than that guy.
Yes.
And so, yeah, thanks, guys, when he scores 32 with 9 assists in an Eastern Conference game. You think he's going to be a star. Nice job. Yeah, my wife could have seen that too. And they just and nothing. I like Stephen and Wilbon as writers. I don't like them. I loved them. I loved their voice. I loved their take. But now to be yelled and screamed at and where is it? It's bad enough that we have Supreme Court justices that clearly show their allegiance on flags in their property more than once. But journalists are supposed to have some degree of blindness to.
They're not journalists anymore, though, David. They're hot take artists. That's their job. They are hot take artists. That's what they do.
Yeah, it's I can talk about players that I know well and be critical of them. And I don't know most of the players. I know a lot of them. But my job is to try to tell the truth the best way I can do it. I don't know P.J. Washington and Derek and Gafford.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. I love Gafford, especially when the Mavericks traded for him. And I wrote, as we published, they won the that's what we're supposed to be doing as journalists. And for these guys, it's taken us down a bad path. And Henry talks about how these are movie characters and we're telling about movies. But they're not even storytellers. It's just a bunch of MTV bullshit. It's not. I think there's a better way to do it. I'm sure. I don't watch NFL football. I almost want to do it in September just to see how they do it now. It's such a popular sport.
They do it way better than the NBA.
Do they really?
Yeah,
it's so sad to me.
I don't watch NFL as much as I used to, but David, those shows, they're breaking down what is happening, right? They're telling you why the check down to this receiver is important in this play because it's not so and so and it's none of that. It's none of that hot take nonsense. It just
imagine seeing Chris Paul really diagnose.
He'd be incredible.
Instead, he was so awful and boring.
Because that's probably what the producer's telling him.
Correct. I don't blame Chris Paul. He's a professional basketball player. He's not a professional TV anchor.
Right.
Chris, tell us. Here's 5 plays. You pick 5 plays. Like when JJ and LeBron do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's entertaining stuff.
As
I
do
realize I'm right. And maybe other people don't. And so Henry's argument is always going to be, no one wants to be educated. I'm not arguing with Henry. What do I know? I just know this is terrible. This is terrible. And it's not good for our players. I don't know why they think it's good that we trash our guys. I don't get it.
Because it's about fans, and fandom isn't about truth or education or logic. It's about feeling validation, right? If I feel a certain type of way about something, I need the people on TV talking about the sport to validate my feelings. Feeling number 1.
That's what Henry says.
I hate Rudy Gobert. Great. Draymond tells me he hates Rudy Gobert. So I am right.
I feel good.
Correct. And I feel good. That's it. That's what it's all about. And it works. And now to us, that is like, but that doesn't help anything. Who cares? I want to know about the game, but that's what that's what fans want. They want their emotions validated. And, it's what it is. I will say one thing about the, Wilbon and Smith not being journalists. The thing that Smith does that's so dangerous is he hides behind that journalist tag still, even though he's no longer one. And he used that in that Jaylen Brown thing with the whole source. I'm reading a text from a source right now that tells me it's Jaylen Brown's "I'm better than you" attitude. And Jaylen actually quote tweeted him on Twitter and said, "Name the source." Like who? And again, look, I am not saying Stephen A. Smith is lying about this. But in instances like that, where it is such a direct, for lack of a better term, character assassination, who said it?
Well, I don't care so much who said it. Was this a poll of 1,000 people, or was this one dude? Like, you could always find a source that's going to say something negative about someone.
Right.
That isn't journalism.
I agree.
You're supposed to be checking, because let me tell you something. I know people who don't feel that about Jaylen Brown.
I agree.
They feel exactly the opposite. So the journalist talks to them too. And you get both sides of that story. And then you realize there's no story here.
Correct.
Hey, he has some detractors. What rich dude doesn't? Yeah. Come on. Yeah, I don't think Jalen Brown gives a fuck.
He does.
Yeah, that's what the money's for.
That's exactly what the money's for. A couple of the quick things before we leave, David. JJ Redick looks like he is the leader in the clubhouse to be the next Lakers head coach. And I don't like this for a variety of reasons. One, and it's not that I don't think JJ Smartin doesn't know basketball. He clearly does. But like, you gotta like build your way up to this thing. Like, head coach of the Lakers, when the most you've coached, I think, are his son's AAU games, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he's done more than that. And again, with the whole podcast with LeBron and all, it's just going to be seen in a certain kind of way, which is going to tell the Lakers players, JJ doesn't matter. LeBron's the guy. And which I'm sure that maybe they already know. I don't know. It just, to me, seems like a recipe for disaster.
I read, I'm friendly with JJ. I read that, so I say this with all due respect. I read that they see him as a Pat Riley. Is that because he was a broadcaster first, like Pat was?
Or he wears nice suits?
What is it? No, I think they're talking about the broadcaster. Okay. Pat was a broadcaster.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
I know the story well.
Yes. Yeah.
Jack McKinney.
Yep.
I worked at camp. He's passed away now. I worked at camp with Jack McKinney long after he retired from the Lakers after his famous bike accident, which created this whole mess to begin with.
Yep.
With Paul Westhead or whatever. It's disrespectful to my profession.
I was just gonna say.
I think if you gave JJ a 10-year contract and said you got all 10 years, he'll end up being just fine. Maybe great, but he won't be bad. I don't think he'll be bad. But to do it now, if I was advising JJ, which I'm not, I would tell him, if you need the money, do it. If you don't need the money and you really want to be a coach, be an assistant somewhere. Yeah, get better at this. It's tough to learn on the job as the head coach at any place. I don't care if Detroit named the place; it's not easy. It's a lack of understanding of our business.
And it's so funny because you contrast that with yesterday's announcement that the Clippers are extending Ty Lue. I'm like, look, you say what you want about the Clippers, but at least they know that much, right? Like, we have an established guy who is an excellent head coach. We're going to keep him around, right? Like, I mean, this guy knows what he's talking about. Again, we'll see if that's true, if it happens, whatever. I don't know. Again, I think it's a bad idea. And to David's point, it is disrespectful to his profession. Another player connected to the Lakers in a way because of who his dad is. Bronny James is staying in the 2024 NBA draft. Rich Paul, Clutch, and his agency have put out a lot of statements. No two-way contracts. He's got 10 workout invites. He's not doing them. He's only doing 3. A whole lot of different things. And David, you said something very interesting to me before we started recording that Bronny's not a regular player, so we shouldn't expect him to do regular things as it relates to his draft process. But elaborate on that more and talk into still why that doesn't mean that he's still a long ways away from being a helpful and productive NBA player.
Right. You can take the argument he hasn't earned any of this. That's true. He's not an NBA player now. No one else in the draft is either. Maybe 1 or 2 possibly older guys. It's a tough league here. It's a tough fucking league. Tough. 3 second-year players had net positives, and none of them were Paolo Banchero. It was J-Dub, I think I've said it before, J-Dub, Nemhard, and Keegan Murray. That's it. Those 3 guys had a net positive impact in terms of net rating. Not APM, but net rating. Bronny is not any good now. He's way behind because he missed so much basketball. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he can learn to be a primary one, and I think he sees the game well. He's just out of practice. His shot looks great. It doesn't work in games too well. That doesn't mean he won't be able to figure it all out. But I think Rich Paul knows, he's going to be a super wealthy kid. His dad's a billionaire or close to it anyway. And we can pick and choose. And so that's just an agent doing his job. I'm not a big fan of clutch sports, but I think he's done a good job with Bronny. His dad, as a carrot, matters. He's taking advantage of his client's situation. That's what his job's supposed to be. Someone will pick him up. We'll probably never see him for a while. He's going to have to be. I don't care what. The reason I say no two-way is because they want to be a rostered player. And two-ways aren't guaranteed. He wants a roster deal. He probably wants a multi-year deal, guaranteed. Then he'll go to the G League just fine. Now, if he starts saying he's not going to play G League, I would cut him immediately and never call him again. You have to do the G League. It's not fair if the guys on the team. It'd be like putting Michael Jordan. It wouldn't be quite like that, but it'd be putting Michael Jordan in Major League Baseball because he's famous. It's not fair to the other guys. Michael Jordan felt that way when he was playing single A ball. Is these guys are trying to build a career, and I took one of their spots, and they don't want to lose games because I suck. He felt that pressure. It's not fair for Bronny to have to play in the NBA. Let him play in the G League and figure it out. He'll be like everybody else there. They'll have 1 or 2 teams interested in signing to a real deal and investing in his future. And I think the agent's doing a good job for that.
And you think development-wise, it's gonna take time, right? This is gonna be
years.
All right, yeah, it's a couple of months, and then G League is ready to roll. It's gonna be
years. Yeah.
Listen, folks, this is from David Thorpe, who does this for a living. Like, this is not, he's not just talking off the cuff here, right? As much as everyone wants to, it's so cool.
I'm a big fan.
I'm
a big fan. I've written 3 articles, but I'm a big fan. It's going to take 2 years at least before he's even passable. And he'll have a decent game here and there if you throw him in enough games. No one's going to guard him potentially. They're helping, whatever. He'll get some shots, but to be an impactful player is years away, 2-3 years at least.
Well, there it is, folks. All right, everybody, enjoy the playoffs, the weekend. By next week, potentially by Monday, we'll be all set with our NBA Finals matchup, and we'll start breaking that down. Take care.